Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome, and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I wanted to just kind of pop on and take a moment and just really recognize that many of us are going through massive upheavals and changes, and I could do an energy update just based around that. So maybe I will, and then I'll go into a little bit of flow. And I'm going to be turning this light on and off, so apologies if that messes with your vision, but yeah. So the first thing I wanted to say is, wow. We have got so many things coming in, and my girlfriend sent me a message the other day saying from someone, massive changes are upon us. Like it's some new announcement. I'm just like, no shit. Sorry, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the internets, but essentially, we are definitely going through some massive changes in case you haven't noticed. So if you're new to this channel, I mean, I'm planning on just going into a little bit of an energy update. I like to go into flow where I'm connecting with my higher self and my guides and angels, and I just bring through the messages that they have to share. But I've talked a lot recently about the physical body. That's been one of the massive messages that's been coming in. I have yet to share that video because, quite frankly, I haven't had the time to edit it and then upload it and then put a description to it because I'm getting information so fast. I just don't have time. And right now, the funny part is, I don't even have time to delegate what I need somebody to do to an assistant. Anybody else feeling that way? So that's one of the messages that's been coming up, is everything has kind of increased. So we've got so much going on. It's like we could go with this, we could go with that. Where do you want to go with your creations? What do you want to create? So I'll start off just by saying this isn't like for wimps. I mean, this is life, you guys, and many of us are going through massive upheavals in our lives, and that is not something to poo-poo about, if we want to call it that. It's a big deal for a lot of us. We're going through relationship changes, job changes, career path reorganizing, health crises, family crises, or maybe our own individual emotional crises. All of these things are happening in our lives and lives of our loved ones, lives of our friends and family. So not only are we going through it on our own, but we're also helping, if we can, our brothers and sisters and ancestors to help, or to we're also helping them. So the biggest message that I've always said over the last few years is you have to help. It's like being on an airplane. If the oxygen masks come down, you got to put yours on first. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So that's number one. And the guides keep emphasizing how important physical well-being is. And so I could go do a whole video just on that. I did one years ago. I think my ascension symptoms video, which is pretty old by now, had some stuff in it to help people with some physical symptoms that they might be feeling. Sorry about the vibration here on my phone, but again, this is meant to be listened to, not necessarily watched. So recognizing that a lot of our physical things going on in our body are clues as to what we need to shift in our physical well-being, but it's also clues in what we need to shift in our mental well-being and emotional state as well. Now, a lot of people ask me about dimensions, and from my perspective, we are in all dimensions at all times. It's kind of like what Bashar talks about. If you haven't watched Bashar, Daryl Anka channels Bashar, and he's got some just massively helpful information that is a very good description of how reality works from my perspective. And that's just my own, everything I share is my own perspective. So we're having this massive upheaval. And so anything in our life that is being called to be up-leveled, upgraded, and let go of is here now. And again, everything here now all at once. So the dimensions are based on where our vibration is at moment to moment. Doesn't necessarily mean, I don't believe necessarily that it means we're going to pop in and out of dimensions from one second to the next. I think it might take a little bit longer than that time-wise. However, it does mean that if we hold a frequency consistently for a long enough period of time, we will move in and out of dimensions. And so if you want to be in a frequency of a higher dimension, then it's important to acknowledge and recognize where we are vibrating in the moment. But also it's important to be in the moment and be present with what we're experiencing, because just like when you teach yoga, so I'm a yoga teacher, we teach that it isn't about the pose. It's not about getting into the pose of the asana. It's about the process of getting there, the journey of exploration, the journey of how it feels to open the body and then move through into hold with consistency that particular pose. And that is a reflection of life, right? So these are things to keep in mind. A lot of people are really worried about jumping to 5D. We did not come here to just experience 5D. And if you're not sure what 5D is and you're watching this going, what is she talking about? I'm just going to call it bubbles of reality, frequencies that we are contained within, that we are, or mediums, a medium of energy that we are experiencing reality from and through. That's my definition of a dimension. So what happens is we think we should be already here. We feel like we're down here and we're judging ourselves for not being up here. But dimensions to me aren't higher or lower. They're just either more expansive or less expansive. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the expansiveness is, to me, it's just more available to us. And of course, having more available to us seems like a better thing. But if we're here to experience certain things through a particular medium, because that experience is going to gift us with tools for the next medium that we'll be experiencing life through, then it's extremely valuable that we stay in that medium for a while to fully digest and integrate whatever tools we can, experiences, memories, frequencies, in order to then bring them with us into the next dimension, which from my perspective is actually happening simultaneously, if that makes sense. So we have a tendency to think if we do this then, no, that's happening now. So that's just something to recognize and be aware of in our realities. I need a cup of coffee. So the other information that's coming through, let me think about this. I can't pause this video. I've been trying to record on Zoom so it's easier to upload, but my internet doesn't work in my car very well when I'm en route. That's something else that's synchronistic to just keep in mind. We're going to have moments where we feel like our system is down. I'm hearing System of a Down. Oh my goodness, I forgot about that band. Taking me back. So we're going to feel as if our connection is a little wobbly to source, to who we think we are, to who we thought we were. We might have moments of complete and total disconnect where we have to shut down, regroup, and refire all cylinders. But we have to recharge all cylinders before refiring all cylinders. And I can't remember if I said this at the beginning because I actually had to re-record. But essentially what that looks like is we might be, again, it's the airplane symbology or analogy. You have to put your mask on if there's an emergency before you put somebody else's mask on, because if you aren't taking care of yourself, then you're going to pass out. You're not going to be even aware of how to take care of somebody else. And then that other person's going to have to take care of you. So a lot of the old paradigms of service and that's it, are being understood from a different perspective. So it is service to self first, but it's not service to self in a selfish way. It's service to the bigger picture for higher and greater good in alignment with love light, which means taking care of ourselves first. You have to drink water. You have to have some nutrients and nutrition in order to thrive in this medium of reality. And in order to create through this medium, or to expand in the medium, the container, the space that we're encapsulated within from our highest vibratory frequency, which some people could view as moving faster. But again, that would be a linear representation of what that means, but that's another video. We have to really see what our bodies need, really see what we need mentally, emotionally, and all of that. And that's what the biggest and loudest messages my guides have been sharing with me in the last, well, on and off forever, but especially lately, because the energies have ramped up, right? So it's like, yeah, duh, the energies are crazy for a lot of us. And I want to just go back, because there are some people that are in a place of frustration that other people don't get this. They don't see that this is happening. They don't see what we think they should. And it's that simple. It isn't about what we think someone else should see. That is their choice. That is their choice in free will to experience their experience how they choose to experience it. And we are being called to not be in a place of judgment about how they experience that. Now, granted, there are people making some pretty selfish choices, and they are not serving necessarily, from our perspective, love and light. They are serving a machine that might be based on ego, etc., etc. Again, be the change you want to see in the world. So that might be the case, but it still does not help our case to judge them, because then that frequency is literally a vibratory energy that we are utilizing consciously or unconsciously to create our reality, to bring us into the dimension of awareness and expansion that we are then the medium in which we are experiencing our experience through. So that means we're the ones doing this to ourselves. So that's something to keep in mind from that perspective. That doesn't mean that people should be selfish and egotistical and self-serving. That's something that we won't be seeing as much of when we are the ones taking our own power back and creating from a place of love. That will then be reflected back to us in our very specific and close reality. We may not be seeing it as much out there in the other bubbles or subsets of reality, but sorry, I'm doing a little strobe light here, a little shaking of the camera. So anyways, I hope that makes sense as to what I'm saying. Now, the other messages that have been coming through are very esoteric or woo-woo. Not that that wasn't woo-woo sounding, it's all science. But we have the earth. The earth is shifting as well. Massive changes are happening inside of the earth. And a lot of the words, I have to go back and re-listen to some of the messages that I've brought through, because I've done recordings and videos. And there's been some words I'm not familiar with that I have to look up the etymology of. But sinking stones. There's been messages about rocks inside the earth that are making sounds. And that sounds so like science fiction. Where do we think science fiction came from? Channeled information quite frequently from higher realms. But it's important to realize that the earth is a frequency, of course, But all of the crystals, the rocks, the granite, everything that is inside of the earth, the elements, the elementals, are all vibrating and communicating and creating frequency. So the reason that this is so important is the earth is activating as well. So the stones, the message that I got was that as these earthquakes occur, and there's earthquakes happening all over the world. So I'm not saying this to create fear. It's not just big earthquakes in places like Argentina or little, certain areas in the United States that are on fault lines, or certain places in, I won't name all the places. I'm using, or South America, I won't say Argentina specifically, but bottom line is that creates a movement. It creates a vibration, and energy is released from inside of the craters, inside of the spaces inside of the earth. So this releases chemical compounds that are responsible for evolution in a positive way. But it also creates an effect on the, everything is a sound. Everything is a vibration and makes a resoundance, a resonance, a sound that actually is, can be heard. Not necessarily with our classical idea or understanding of how we hear, but it's felt. So, so just being aware of that. We are hearing things because we're feeling it inside of our bodies. Our bones, our skeletal structure is a crystal sound system. So as energy moves through our body, think of it as a pinball machine, and it vibrates, and when something hits our bones, it sends out an oscillator, a signal, oscillating, vibrating, moving through our system, and it actually works together to wake up certain channels inside of us that maybe were blocked before. And that's just a very linear presentation of what's happening inside of the earth as well. So let us use our body for an example. I'm kind of in flow right now. Our bodies create tones, and our tone or sound signature is something that we cannot necessarily see, but we all feel it. When you come into resonance with someone, you feel their tone. You're feeling and creating I'm being shown a sonar, right? It's a ping, and it creates a map around the body and through each other as mediums in order to understand or signal back and forth. Whether we're doing this consciously or unconsciously, this is happening all the time. So this then maybe, let's say, moves or ripples through our body, our bloodstream, our bones, our muscles, our fascia, our connective tissue, our brain, all of it. So it's all working together, our cerebral spinal fluid. But if you think of the body of the earth as being one giant human in her own right, and that's a play on words, the ley lines that move through the earth, the meridians or chakra systems of the earth, the rivers, the oil in the body of Mother Earth, the cerebral spinal fluid, right? The blood and the bones, which are the crystals and the rocks inside of the earth, begin to, I'm just going to go into flow, initiate a set of frequencies and energies that literally morph or change the system, the sound system in which the earth is held within, the frequency, the exchange of energy. Everything then is chemically aligned to basically support the new frequencies and energies that are coming in. So this, I was shown, is coming up from the earth. But in addition to that, it is the energies are also coming from the body that the earth is also held within. So the Milky Way, let's call it, for example. The Milky Way is full of juice, energy, photons, electricity, photonic light, we'll say, elements, very rare elements. Actually, that was another message that I had written a long time ago. I still don't understand. But very rare elements have been shaken up, let's say, and created a concoction of grand design in order to assist us in our own grand design. So now we're in this body. Our bodies are encapsulated within this air that's held on the planet Earth through gravity and electromagnetic energy and frequency, conduction, waves. And that is also the case of Earth. Her body is encapsulated and held within the Milky Way galaxy. We'll just use that as an example, or our solar system. And so the other bodies inside the solar system all ping and charge off of each other. So Earth isn't the only planet that's heating up. Other planets are as well. The sun, the star, I don't know that I would compare it to the heart, but let's just use that as an example, maybe the solar plexus. But we'll just say that is also radiating, okay, the frequency to our planet. So our planet is then absorbing, right, those energies. And that makes a chemical charge, an electrical charge, that is then trickled down into the water, into the crystals, into the dirt and the trees, and absorbed through osmosis, and all of this. It's all connected, and this is also happening in our bodies, which is part of the reason we're so impacted by the solar flares. So these are all things, that messages that I've been getting in a nutshell, and there's very specific physics that are responsible for this, but this is a good way of just looking at what's happening as our evolutionary cycle expands. So this means that we are being invited to really connect to the earth and feel that charge. If we're not grounding, if we're not breathing in this medium, and we're blocking ourselves, we're really doing a disservice to ourselves. But we're also doing a disservice to the earth, because she's pinging off of us just as much as we're pinging off of her, because we are on and within, intrinsically connected to her energy field, right? There's no separation, really. We just think that we're separate. We feel that way so that we could have, ignore my nostril, so that we could have an experience, right, in a certain way, to experience separation. Okay, what else? So much. I didn't really go into flow yet, but, well, that was a little bit of flow. So being aware of all these things can be really helpful. You guys, it's happening to everyone in some way. It's not just happening to you. It's not just happening to me. Now, with this comes something, emotions, and I'm hearing burps, releases. So many of us are realizing and releasing, or we're releasing and then realizing. It doesn't have to be in a certain order of things, but sometimes it's helpful to realize what it is that we are releasing, or realize something so we can release it easier. But a lot of us are releasing things and we don't know what it is, or we're confused by it, and that's okay too. It's just based on our own individual perspectives. So upgrades, let's talk about this. Our bodies are going through, and I guess what happens is, picture the Milky Way and the galaxy and all of that, all of these alignments that are happening, and again, I'm not an astrology buff, but all of these alignments that are happening at auspicious times such as the eclipses or the solstice or the new moons and the full moons. So sometimes we can utilize those as I'm seeing a coin in a video game. When you up level, and and I don't even play video games really. I think you guys, the last video game I played, this is how sad it is. The last video game I played was Crash Bandicoot. Maybe Sonic the Hedgehog. Do you guys remember Crash Bandicoot? So I think that's the last video game I played, and Sonic the Hedgehog. So, and I don't even really remember those, but so you get like a coin or something, but when you've played the game enough and you haven't necessarily gotten to the next level, but you've gotten to a really high place in the level that you're used to playing, you are able to recognize, oh, hey, I know there's a treasure up here, and if I can get that, it's going to help me in this series. I'll get a higher score, or I'll get to a higher level, or I could take those points and carry them over to the next level. So these are all different ways of looking at it. I can see how valuable video games are for our understanding of how our reality works. So, and music too, but that's something else I'm not trained in. But I understand that essentially we're really being called to have this experience in gather our resources is basically the message that's coming through, as much as we have the capability of doing, so that we can up level in a smoother and faster way according to what we feel is happening or what we think is happening. I kind of got lost a little bit in that little translation, but I think you guys might get what I'm putting down. So these coins that we're collecting, are not only for us. I'm being shown a picture of us giving them to other people too. So if we've collected enough, we don't have to hoard those coins. We can just say, here you go. I learned this. Maybe this was helpful. That person needs a hug today. Maybe giving somebody a little extra, holiday gift that might seem minor might actually cheer them up. Just little things that we are being called to be conscious of, to help us consciously co-create and not just go through the motions. Everybody's going through it in their own way. Some people are just going through the motions. And again, I'm being called to come back to not judging them. I just did a video about contractual obligations, and I think that's going to be coming up a lot. Because one of the messages that's been coming through is how we interpret our reality based on the old system. Even the old spiritual systems is also changing. So what are we attached to? What ideas are we attached to that we don't necessarily need to hang on to anymore? Even in the old methodologies and ways of teaching. So if someone was teaching us things that we could do in 3D, and here we are in 4D, I'm just going back to the dimensions, which again are bubbles of reality, or the mediums in which we are experiencing our reality, and the vibratory frequency that particular medium holds, that we are part of, or that we are encapsulated within. So let us say that you are being taught things that are very helpful in a lower frequency. But now we've moved into a higher definition of what that is. That requires us to up-level our definition of what that is. It requires us to up-level our defining boundaries, or the container in which we are working through and encapsulated within, which also means that a lot of the information that we've been processing or receiving is different now. So some of the order to things, or some of the ways in which we were taught to live our reality, are no longer necessary. This is what I've been getting messages about. And I know some people have a really hard time with that, because they were, let's say they spent years going to college it's like, if you have a medical degree, that doesn't mean that as new information comes in, you're not going to adapt to that new information. Although that has been the case in our medical and scientific communities in some of them, unfortunately. So, and I'm going to use an example. I have a loved one who's going through some sickness right now. So it doesn't, just because we're on this journey and we're maybe feeling like we've learned a lot or we are in a higher vibration, doesn't mean that the things that are happening aren't going to affect us. So I just want to share that. But, and I watched this, the medical community. I know more about some of the things that could be beneficial for this individual than the doctors do. Of course, the doctors know a lot more than I do in a lot of ways. Clearly, I'm not going to surgically operate on someone, maybe psychic surgery, but that's not my training, okay? However, some of the things to recognize are that if we were a medical doctor, we want to be up to date on the new findings, so that we can best serve our patients. So it's the same thing with us. If we're ignoring the findings that we're having, or so I watched an old school doctor versus a newer doctor, and both of them had valuable information, but we chose to go with the new school doctor, for example, because they were more up to date on some of the cutting edge technologies that can help this loved one. And I'm using that as an example. It's nothing against the other doctor. I'm not going to judge the other doctor for not knowing this. The other doctor has their methodology. They have been trained in a particular order of doing things. They've been trained in a particular methodology that, let's say, is based in an old paradigm. But now we're bridging together that old paradigm and new paradigm. So if we're too busy worrying about or hanging on to our old way of doing things because that's what we're comfortable with, because that's what we're an expert in, because that's what makes us look, is it ego? That would be a good question to ask ourselves. We don't look like we know what we're doing unless we hang on to that. And you guys, this includes, and that may not be the only reason, I'm just throwing that out there, this includes the spiritual community. It includes some of the Gnostic teachings. They are very valuable. Now, granted, some of those teachings were given to the teachers from a higher dimension. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But they might have been interpreted through the filtration system of someone having an experience in a lower dimension or a lower frequency, if that makes sense. So you might reread those Gnostic teachings and get something completely different in a positive way to bring forward, just like interpreting the Bible. If you're interpreting the Bible and you're in a place of fear, you're going to get one meaning. But if you're in a place of love and light, you're going to get something completely different. So these are all things to keep in mind, and this is a reference to just our reality structure and how we're interpreting our reality structure. So I'm just going to kind of end on that note and just share that we all have these big, beautiful resources at our fingertips, at our availability, inside of our fingertips. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? That's another message that's been coming up. Just because someone is, let's say, old school, I took some of the things from this old doctor and I took some of the things from the new doctor and I've combined them. We're taking things from 3D, we're taking things from 5D, 12D, 9D, whatever we want to call it, the dimensional access that we have, and we're merging it in the 4D and creating from there. Again, it's a valuable place or medium or container in which for us to share, experience, create from, because this has a ripple effect into the future realities. It also has a ripple effect back into the past, which again is a whole other video. So, all right, I'm going to end on that note. I guess I'll go into a deeper state of flow at another time, but that was kind of fun. I like to transition back and forth sometimes, and that's a good way to end on this note. A lot of us are doing that already. We're transitioning in and out of, when you have an aha, and it comes from a place of very centered awareness and it feels very heart-opening, pay attention to that, because that is your higher self or your guides or you being a channel for that higher frequency, and it comes through in a very beautiful moment of clarity, and that's something to acknowledge and recognize, and feel grateful for. In that moment of having that moment of clarity, the more gratitude we feel, the more those moments will be available to us, will come to us, because then we open up through the channel of the heart, and we allow that energy to flow from a pure place of appreciation. In love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Namaste.